So, as Descartes pointed out, the only thing which we can prove objectively, and even then only to ourselves, is that we exist. Our consciousness exists, right? You are here to ask the question, do I exist? And the fact that you understood that you asked it means that you do. The problem is that we have a number of problems with defining the actual nature of consciousness. Now, there's a very sort of materialistic and naturalistic presumption, which is that consciousness is just sort of an emergent quality of matter, right? Like our brains are just sort of a computer that does consciousness. This is objectively not true. Actually, we, at this point, can hook up electrodes to the brain and see which parts of the brain activate when you perform which tasks. What we have found is that, in fact, there is no way at all. It's not that we haven't found it yet. It's not possible. We know what every part of the brain does. There is no part of the brain which combines these experiences into what we would call a synesthetic experience. In other words, your conscious reality, right? You can see and hear and feel things at the same time. You have colors assigned to objects as they refract light. There is no part of the brain that does that. There is no part of the brain that does that. So it has to be something else. Consciousness, therefore, is irreducible. It is not an emergent quality of matter. And there's another reason to believe that this is true, which is that in every behavior of matter, right, there is always an antecedent in inferior forms of matter, right? We know that if you push on a brick, the brick will move because the brick is made of atoms, and if you push an atom, it will move. And an atom is made up of smaller and smaller parts, and if you push each of those, they will move, right? So locomotive force, or rather kinetic force in general, is an antecedent property of matter. Consciousness is not. So, as far as we can tell. So, right, consciousness is not something that has any antecedent, and there's no precedent for anything like consciousness. So what I propose, and basically the long form of this is, there is no such thing as artificial intelligence. Because in order to actually simulate a consciousness, we would first have to know what a consciousness is, and we don't. And not only do we not know, we know that we can't know, studying things the way that we're studying them now. The brain has been fully mapped. We do not have this information. It is not possible for us to find it pursuing it the way that we are. There is either something that we do not understand yet, perhaps consciousness is inherent to all matter, which I really hope isn't true, or there's a soul, basically. Those are more or less our two options. Or there is something else that we're not quite, that we just haven't discovered yet that could explain it as well. But, the point is, there is no such thing as artificial intelligence. We don't even have the beginnings of how to approach such a thing. The most you can do is sort of a complex Chinese box, right? A Chinese room? A machine that could simulate intelligence. A machine that could answer the way that you would expect a human of varying intelligence to answer any given question. But it isn't intelligent, and it isn't a person, and it doesn't have consciousness. It isn't experiencing anything. It's a bunch of levers turning in a box. And you aren't that. Because we've looked inside the box that is your brain, and there are no fucking levers, right? There is no lever for how you experience consciousness. So yeah, no. There is no Chad transhumanist, because transhumanism isn't real. It is actually impossible with what we know now. Anarcho-primitivism forever. You get the rock. You get the rock.